Hey guys! Before episode 2 begins, I want to give a quick disclaimer. In this episode, I will be talking about a couple of subject matters that might bring up some painful memories of your own as I share more about my own story. There are references to mental illness and self harm, so listener discretion is advised. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for joining me for episode 2 of the Attachment Confessions. My name is Chelsea, and I am so grateful that you've decided to tune in today. It really does mean the world to you guys, seriously. From the moment I learned about a little thing called attachment science, everything, and I mean everything, about every relationship I had ever been in finally made sense. And now I'm learning what it takes to earn my attachment security and have awesome, meaningful, healthy relationships moving forward. On the Attachment Confessions, we'll be discussing all things attachment science. We'll also be chatting about my childhood, my relationships, and this journey I'm currently on of going from FA to Secure AF. And if this is your first time tuning in, that last little snippet probably made absolutely no sense at all, but don't worry, I'll make sense of it soon. Now, if you missed episode 1, I would highly encourage you to press pause on this episode, listen to episode 1 first, and then rejoin us here, okay? Because episode 1 lays out the foundation of attachment science and everything else that we will be talking about moving forward. So, what today's episode is about will make way more sense if you get caught up on episode 1 first, which is titled The Attachment Theory DL. So, for those of you who tuned into episode 1 already, let's quickly recap some things. As you'll recall, attachment science was first introduced in the 1950s, 1960s by British psychologist John Bowlby. Attachment theory refers to the attachment style that you formed when you were a child. So, primarily in the 0 to 5 year age range, although it can continue forming after those years throughout childhood, based on the emotional attunement level, or lack thereof, of your parents or primary caregivers. This formed attachment style then goes on to shape how you behave moving forward in your relationships for the rest of your life. Now, this is primarily in romantic relationships, but it also certainly pertains to friendships and professional working relationships, family relationships, etc. Now, let's quickly refresh our memories on the 4 attachment styles. First, we have the anxious preoccupied, also known as the AP for short. As you'll recall, this attachment style is formed in childhood due to absenteeism and intermittent emotional reinforcement from the parents or primary caregivers. Their attachment wound is the fear of abandonment due to the intermittent emotional reinforcement they received in childhood. And their biggest needs in relationships are reassurance, validation, and consistency from their partner. This is the person that is the ultimate people pleaser. They will morph into whatever version of themselves that they think that their partner that they're with at that particular time would want them to be. They self-abandon their own emotions to try and gain favor with their partner. Next, there is the dismissive avoidant, also known as the DA for short. So, unlike the AP, they had very physically present and involved parents or primary caregivers during childhood. However, their attachment style is formed in childhood due to severe emotional unavailability and emotional neglect from their parents or primary caregivers. So their attachment wound centers around the fear of being defective or broken due to their dismissed emotional experiences as a child, which leads to a high level of shame and fear of showing emotional vulnerability. Now, their biggest needs in a relationship are peace and harmony, and they highly value their independence and autonomy and will use distractions like overworking or having lots of hobbies in order to create space in their relationships so they can keep their partners at arm's length which allows them to then withdraw and detach emotionally from their partners. Okay, up next, we have the fearful avoidant, or the FA for short. And this attachment style is formed in childhood due to experiencing attachment trauma from their parents or primary caregivers. This could be a little t trauma, like their parents bickered a lot in front of them, or a major or many major traumatic events, also known as big T trauma, like a really ugly divorce or the passing away of a parent. Their attachment wound is the fear of betrayal, as they learned that love can oftentimes be conditional, unsafe, or unstable. Their biggest need in a relationship is to be seen, heard, and understood by their partner. And they also have a deep desire to really know and understand their partner on a deep level as well. So, the trauma that they experienced causes them to develop trust issues that they then carry into their romantic relationships. And they are highly attuned to their own emotions as well as their partners. This is definitely the most complex attachment style as they operate across the entire attachment spectrum, all the way from anxious to avoidant, depending on the situation and also depending on their partner's attachment style. So they lean opposite of how their partner leans on the attachment spectrum. And lastly, there is the securely attached. They experienced a stable, emotionally attuning, physically present, and trauma free childhood from their parents or primary caregivers. And so this then allows them to go on to have healthy, emotionally mature relationships with partners and seek out other securely attached individuals to have relationships with. They are known for being great communicators and are able to empathize with their partners, even when there is a disagreement. So, when conflict arises, because it inevitably does in every relationship, they are able to face challenges and work through issues in a mature, healthy manner. They don't run from conflict, they deal with it head on. Now, if all that has you guys cringing because you fall within any attachment category other than secure, well, first off, same. But second off, remember, guys, attachment is learned, and therefore, an insecure attachment style can be unlearned. Thank you, God, right? Which is why I am here yapping away on the attachment confessions about this stuff because honestly, the more people that are aware of attachment science and how it can, for real, change your life in amazing ways, the better off we can all be. Now, as you can maybe tell by the title of episode 2, things are going to get even more personal and honestly a little heavy today. So, I confessed in episode 1 that I am, in fact, a healing fearful avoidant, which, as we were all just reminded, is formed due to childhood trauma. So, today, we're going to take a little trip together down memory lane and chat through how I got here. So, I promised you guys that I was going to be real and raw on the attachment confessions. So, we may as well bust out the tissue box on the second episode, right? Okay, I'm really going to try my best to get through this without going total emo mode on you all, but just saying this is going to be a little difficult to talk about. All right, so no time like the present. Here we go. Hashtag nervous sweating. So, when I was deciphering which attachment style fit me the most, I knew the best course of action was to take a look at my childhood and dissect some core memories in particular, which I will get into here in a minute. But first, I do want to start off by saying that I was so incredibly blessed to have the childhood that I had. I mean, I have the most amazing and supportive parents who are thankfully still married. They actually just celebrated their 48th wedding anniversary in July, which is BANANAS, like holy marriage. That is impressive, right? Also, I have awesome extended family, great friends, many of which I've been friends with for several years. I mean, two of my best friends I met when I was in like second grade. I grew up middle class, involved in church and different activities. My parents were very loving and involved. I have an older brother. Overall, I hardly have anything that I can complain about, you guys. I mean, I really had it so good, and I am beyond thankful because a lot of people had it way different than that. However, I did experience a big T traumatic event when I was 13 years old. Now, remember, attachment styles are primarily formed in the 0 to 5 year age range. However, a major traumatic event or events that take place after that age range could definitely still have a significant impact on the formation of the fearful avoidant attachment style. I also want to say that I talked with my parents about this before putting this episode out. So I definitely didn't want to blindside them or upset them, and I wanted to make sure that I had their blessing to tell this story. I mean, it is my story, but it is also their stories too. So just as they were in my childhood, they were totally supportive of me sharing this. So I know that God puts challenges in our lives for a reason. Sometimes we don't know what the reason is at all. But if our testimonies can touch the heart of others in some way, then that's reason enough to share, right? All right. When I was 13 years old, I found out for the very first time that my dad had a mental illness, bipolar disorder. I'd never heard the term before, and I certainly never noticed anything off or different about my dad or his behavior. So, everything that I had known for 13 years leading up to this moment totally changed and shook my world. My parents had gone out of town for several days, so I'd been staying at a friend's house. And the day that my parents were supposed to be coming back into town, I was waiting and waiting at my friend's house, wondering why I hadn't heard from them or why they hadn't come and got me yet. Well, finally, I got a call from my mom that evening saying that my dad had left and she was going to come get me. And I was super confused. I mean, I didn't know what she meant by dad had left, but I waited at my friend's house for her to come pick me up. Then, when we got home, that's when she explained what had happened. So, my parents had gotten into a fight. And this was my next indication that something was terribly wrong because my parents never fought. I mean, in front of me at least. Again, I know, guys, I was very blessed growing up. Not a lot of people can say that they never experienced their parents fighting. Anywho, she then went on to tell me that my dad had run away on foot. Like, he got so angry that he straight up ran from the house, and she didn't know where he was or where he went. Now, this wasn't before cell phones existed, but this was a time where people weren't attached at the hip to their cell phones. So that might sound like absolute madness to some of you, but yes, believe it or not, there was a time in modern history when people didn't have their cell phones as basically a part of an appendage on their bodies. So there was no way of getting a hold of him, and we had no idea where he went. This then led to my mom sharing with me something that would change my life and my understanding of my dad forever. She told me that he has something called bipolar disorder. Now, he had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder 10 years prior to this, when the first incident took place. I was a toddler. I was like only 3 years old, so I don't have any memory of this first incident. However, my nervous system does. That's how attachment formation works. We may not have much recollection, if any, during that 0 to 5 year attachment formation age range, but our nervous system remembers. It becomes imprinted there. Now, I was never made aware that my dad had bipolar disorder after that first incident. I mean, children that young do not have the developmental psychology to be able to wrap their brains around something as complex as mental illness. So it would have been obviously inappropriate to sit little 3-year-old Chelsea down and give her the scoop on dad's mental illness. Also, I never really needed to know up until this second incident took place when I was 13 because my dad was taking medication for it. So I never saw or experienced anything different or unusual in my dad at all. Well, unfortunately, my dad ended up doing what many, many people who struggle with mental illness, such as bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, do. He decided, man, I feel great. I don't need to take this anymore. So, unbeknownst to anyone, he just stopped taking his medication. Now, obviously, people on these medications feel great or quote unquote normal because the medication is working, it's doing its job. So, that's a lesson to always keep taking it. But he had decided otherwise. And, well, my family's perfect middle class life became very dark and unstable for a while. So, back to my dad having gone missing. We had no clue where he was. And there was a lot of tears and praying and confusion and all sorts of scary thoughts going through me and my brother and my mom's heads during those several hours of uncertainty. So I ended up sleeping with my mom in my parents' bed that night because I was just terrified to be by myself with my thoughts and feelings running rampant. So the next morning, I woke up really early and I walked downstairs and noticed that my dad was back. He was sitting in his office at his computer. Oh my gosh, I was so relieved. I can't even express the relief that I was feeling in that moment. But I was also terrified like I had never felt before. I was so glad that he was back, but he was now a stranger to me. So I quickly tiptoed back upstairs and told my mom, Dad's back. The next several hours after that are honestly just a complete blur to me now. But I do remember basically avoiding my dad at all costs, not knowing how to act around him. I mean, I was honestly scared of him. The house was silent. No one knew how to act or what to say. I mean, it was like a darkness I had never felt was now in my home. The next day, after I'd gotten home from school, my dad approached me and asked if I would go to coffee with him. And this was the first interaction that we'd had with each other. Now, this is another instance in modern history, you guys, where obviously coffee existed, okay, but eighth graders definitely didn't drink it. Don't get it twisted. Coffee is liquid happiness to me now, but in eighth grade, I thought it was liquid dirt, like absolutely disgusting. Also, I'm pretty sure this was before Starbucks even existed in Oklahoma. So coffee shops were not really a thing like they are now. Regardless, I very hesitantly was like, sure, dad. But again, totally terrified. And I definitely didn't want to actually go, if I'm being honest. I loved my dad like crazy. But again, this version of him was nobody that I knew, and I didn't know what he was possibly capable of. And honestly, being alone with him was not something I was really into at that point. Well, we ended up going to the cafe inside of Borders, which if you don't know what that is, it's basically Barnes and Noble, but I don't even think any Borders bookstores exist anymore. But anywho, I could barely look up at my dad. I just kind of kept my head down and listened to him open up to me about his version of events over the last couple of days, and he shared with me about his bipolar disorder and what that causes in his mind, why he acted the way he did, what had taken place while he was basically a missing person, things like that. Turns out he had actually walked on foot to the airport. Now, if you're familiar with Tulsa and where my house at the time was located in South Tulsa, in conjunction to where the Tulsa International Airport is located, that is no short walk. It's about 15 miles one way. So, in the state that my dad was in mentally, his thought process was he's going to get to the airport and then just get on a plane to anywhere. Well, just like he didn't have his cell phone with him, he thankfully didn't have his wallet on him either. So when he got to the airport, he discovered he had no money, no ID, nothing. So he certainly wasn't getting on a plane, thank God. So then he made the trek back home. So this 30-mile round trip adventure took about half a day. So all of this was just so bonkers to hear. But then he shared something with me that was really painful and totally shocking to hear. Something that got my little head to finally look up into his eyes. So he told me that he actually contemplated doing something very harmful and permanent to himself. But the reason he didn't is because every time he had those awful ideations, my face would suddenly flash into his mind saying, "I love you, Daddy," over and over again. And this is something that has stuck with me from that point forward. Um, if you know me and we're friends, you may have noticed I always tell you that I love you when we're hanging out and it's time to part ways, or if we talk on the phone and I say, "I love you" before hanging up. Um, I honestly just say it all the time, really. But this moment with my dad is something that was etched into my brain and my heart to always tell the people that you love them, because you never know the darkness that may be going on inside of them and the type of impact having someone that loves them can make. Mhm. So, um, after our weird coffee date where I definitely didn't drink coffee, things were really edgy for a while at home as my dad slowly reacclimated to getting back on his medication. He ended up going through seasons of mania and depression until his medication had the time it needed to level everything back out in his brain. Now, I don't know if this is common for most people that struggle with mental illness, but unfortunately for my dad, it takes a very long time of being back on his medication for things to get back to a sense of normalcy, like many, many months. Now, remember in episode 1 how I mentioned that fearful avoidants often have an acute sense of hypervigilance? This is because hypervigilance is developed due to certain traumatic events. So, in my case, I had to be ultra aware of the temperature in my house at all times. You could cut the tension with a knife. Was my dad in a manic state or a depressed state? Were my parents fighting? Are my parents going to get divorced? Is my dad going to do something unhinged again? Will I ever experience the quote unquote old version of my dad ever again? I had to stay vigilant at all times so that I was prepared to handle whatever room I was about to walk into or whatever mood my dad was going to be in at that very second, since his mood was constantly up and down. Eventually, by the grace of God, the old dad that I knew came back. I am so, so close to my dad, you guys, which I am so thankful for. He actually delivered me when I was born and cut my umbilical cord and prayed Psalm 23:6 over me. I think that sacred moment, along with our coffee date, created a bond between us that it's honestly just difficult to put into words. My dad is my biggest cheerleader, and I am his. You guys, I have messed up a lot, and I have done some really reckless things I am certainly not proud of. And some of you listening are familiar with that younger version of me. But my dad never for a second has judged me or made me feel any type of shame. He has such a beautiful understanding of mercy and grace because of the mercy and grace he's experienced in his life. And he's always extended that to me. I love and adore my dad to the moon and back. Now, there's two sides to the bipolar disorder traumatic event. So, on one hand, it ultimately connected me to my dad in an unexplainable way, which, although it was hell at the time, it ended up having a beautiful part to it because it created this deep love in me that I have for others and that I express to others. So, on the other hand, this experience definitely formed the fearful avoidant attachment style that I have carried into my romantic relationships. So, the majority of my relationships, with the exception of my most recent one, have primarily been with guys that are highly emotional to the point of being unstable. The experience that I had in childhood, where it seemed as though the love I showed my dad had somehow saved him in a sense, is definitely a theme I've had in romantic relationships. I tended to be attracted to the tortured artist type, like the guys in the band that are super emotionally available, yet have like this mysterious, dark, troubled side to them. It's because I was subconsciously attracted to these types of dudes because somewhere in my subconscious, I thought I had the power to save them. I can change them by loving them, just like I had saved my dad. Now, in my conscious brain, I know that it was not actually me that saved my dad. It was God intervening and redirecting my dad's thoughts to something that would bring him hope and peace and light when he was in his darkest moments. If you're familiar with Dr. John Deloney, you may have heard him say that we are attracted to our unfinished business, which could not reign more true for me. It's taken me many, many years and multiple failed relationships with partners that fit that description to finally realize I can't save anyone. I can't change anyone. Nobody has the power to change another human being, no matter how much you try loving them. And I have unfortunately learned that the hard way. But you know what you can change? You can change your own insecure attachment style. As a healing, fearful avoidant, learning about attachment science has opened my eyes to so many things about myself, you guys. These are things that I am the only one that has the power to change. And dang it, I am making it my mission. Because if I don't change, I'll just keep attracting the same Totally wrong guys. And God and I made a deal that after the doozies I've dated, the next one is going to be the real MVP. Okay, obviously, God and I didn't actually make that deal, but I, without a doubt, believe that He had me stumble upon attachment science earlier this year to show me that the way I've been viewing and doing relationships the past 37 years it just ain't working. But luckily, He's opened my eyes, and I have the power to heal my fearful avoidance and earn my attachment security so that I will finally be the version of myself that is ready for the man that He has chosen to be my forever ride or die. Until then, I'll be keeping my eyes on Him and focusing on processing through traumas I've experienced in my adult romantic relationships and healing those scars so that I don't carry them forward. And you also have the same power to change your insecure attachment style as well. Okay, y'all. That's it for today's emotionally exhausting episode of the Attachment Confessions. I hope that you all made it all the way through, like I barely did. Please join me for next week's episode, where we'll get into more of the details of my failed FA fueled relationships and what I've learned about them and myself that's got me honestly just excited for what's to come. Quick pivot. For those of you that listened to episode 1 and participated in the giveaway challenge, which was to follow or subscribe to this podcast, depending on what platform you listen to it on, the verbiage will change between follow and subscribe. Leave a rating, which are the stars, and a written review within the first week of the first episode dropping. So if you do that, you are entered to win one of 3 $25 Starbucks gift cards. Now, as we all know, I'm a newbie in this podcasting world, so I didn't realize that it can take up to like 36 hours for ratings and reviews to actually show up. So if you did partake in the giveaway challenge, if you could just shoot me a DM on my Instagram at the Attachment Confessions ASAP, that would be amazing because I definitely want everyone who did the challenge to get in the mix. I mean, it is pumpkin spice season after all. My plan is to announce the winners at the end of episode 3, so best of luck. Tee-hee-hee-hee-hee. I'm also going to link Tyus Gibson's attachment style quiz in the show notes again, in case you missed that from our last episode. And please remember, you guys, to DM me your quiz results on Instagram at the Attachment Confessions so that I can tailor our upcoming episodes accordingly. Knowing what y'all's attachment styles are will help me tremendously. And also, if you know of anybody that could benefit from learning about attachment science, please share this podcast with them. Thank you times a billion for listening, you guys. Not a lot of people know this side of me. I'm usually like the self-deprecating goofball that uses humor 24/7, especially at the most inappropriate times. So, this part of my life is not something that I've shared with a ton of people. So, I appreciate you tuning in and allowing me to tell my story. All right, well, that wraps up episode 2, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Okay, bye, guys.